What's up, guys? Happy New Year to you. Welcome to 2025. Today's episode is going to be the beginning of a series, hopefully to help you guys understand and successfully navigate the sneaky ways women gain leverage over men. Now, normally, leverage means the exertion of force by means of a lever and fulcrum. But outside of doing things that would most likely involve construction, or what martial artists would determine as force exerted against them redirected against their opponent, we're going to talk about a different kind of leverage today. One that could most certainly be legal, but is much more often emotional leverage placed upon you to put you in a position where you are subservient and vulnerable. And I don't want that for you, because things of that nature are often destructive in nature. And on top of that, when you find yourself in a subservient position, the people over you are very rarely kind about it. So today, in episode 1, we are going straight for the jugular, for the big boy, marriage. What it used to be, what God intended for it to be, what it's become, and its current goal in the modern West. And as a side note, why so many men who do actually still want that for themselves are running for every airport and every ship out of the West as they can to the third world, where what we're about to talk about today does not exist in large part. So, number 1, there was a time where all you had to do was declare yourselves to be married, and that was enough. Where effectively 2 families would enter agreement. This family's son would marry this family's daughter. They would come together, and resources would be pooled with the birth of the first of the offspring that would solidify the family bond, which would often be like a treaty between the 2 families if they were warring before or feuding before, or if they were 2 monarchies of 2 different countries. That child would effectively be a peace treaty that lived and breathed. Marrying for love is a very new concept in the grand scheme of human history, within the past 150 to 200 years or so. But before that, you didn't marry someone because you loved them. One of 3 things would have to happen eventually for love, as we know it now, to take place. A, you have to be physically attracted to the person, which certainly helps, obviously. B, you would have to have an understanding of duty. That this marriage isn't just for you. There's a much bigger picture. It's bigger than either of the 2 parties involved, the husband or the wife. We have a duty to solidify a truce between our families, or at the very least, if there wasn't bad blood beforehand, we have the duty to make sure that we solidify a lasting bond between our 2 families over farmland or over mineral resources, things of that nature. Or C, we have a duty to the vows that we took. What does your word mean? What is it worth? Are you going to abide by that which you said you're going to abide by? Do you really mean till death do us part? Do you really mean in richer or poorer? Do you really mean in sickness and in health? So in the event that life's trials and tribulations come our way, can I truly count on you? This is either spouse asking the question. Can I truly count on you to be there for me as you said you would? This is a character issue at that point. It's for that reason that divorce was so difficult to attain in the ancient world, and as recently as the 1960s, because the ancient world knew, without the cancer that is politically correct speech, that women are chaotic in their thinking, that they are chaotic in their emotional state. And left to their own devices to make emotions first decisions, they would destroy everything they came in contact with. The family, that man's trust, the best interests of their children, so forth and so on. So, what do we have to look forward to today, fellas? What is this episode about in terms of leverage? Well, what we've known, or rather what we 21st century men have come to know, is that when you involve the government in an arrangement, an agreement that's supposed to be between man, woman, and God Almighty, when you involve the government, you involve judges, you involve attorneys, quite possibly the police, and you have a woman who uses her emotions to make decisions that affect other people for decades to come, making decisions that hurt people but benefit her. In most cases, every now and again, you'll get a Kevin Federline, but Britney Spears' ex-husband is without question the exception and not the rule. Gentlemen, you have a situation in the West now where after the sexual revolution of the 1960s and 70s, where men are not guaranteed to have a virgin on their wedding night, in large part. You're not guaranteed to have a woman with the advent of no-fault divorce, meaning, or for you guys who are new here, welcome. Hit that like button. No-fault divorce could be translated into no reason divorce. Well, basically, she wakes up one day, and let's say you guys live in Minnesota. She wakes up one day in St. Paul, Minnesota, but the wind is blowing just 2 miles per hour too fast for her comfort level down in Jackson, Mississippi. And because it's so windy in Mississippi, I'm going to run down to the nearest lawyer's office, file for a divorce, and take my husband for half of everything he ever made in his life. And the kids, and the cars, and the house, and depending on how far he is into his career, half his retirement. At a job I've never clocked in once to. Just cuz. He never had to hit her. He could have been faithful the entire time. He could have been a great father to his children. But because she wants out she goes. Straight to the family court pay window, like at a casino, and cash him out. Meanwhile, she'll move her new boyfriend, or boyfriends plural, into his old house, bang these dudes in every possible position, in his old bed, run a conga line of different men and swinging dicks throughout that house in front of her children, to the point where the kids can't remember which guy's name it is this week, screwing them up for life and not caring because it's all about her. Meanwhile, the dad, who never did a damn thing wrong, is living in a 1-bedroom apartment clear across town in the shitty part of town. This is the 3rd time this month they took the tires off his car, leaving it on bricks right before he has to go to work in the morning. Type of situation. Happens every day. Way more often than any of us are comfortable talking about. But imagine a system in place that justifies this and encourages it and then financially compensates it. You see, gentlemen, the divorce industry has 4 components and multiple governmental and corporate co-conspirators. The complex includes dating, the engagement, marriage, and of course the divorce industry itself. Each step in this path, or you can say each cog in this machine, runs off of and quite literally cannot survive without male ignorance. Most specifically, male ignorance to the darkest aspects of female nature. Now, I understand a lot of my guys who watch my content are married currently. A lot of the guys watching my content are engaged to be married, and the day is soon drawing nigh. And you know what? Listen, I really do wish you guys well. I really do, because if you're going to make that kind of commitment, if you're going to put yourself in that kind of legal danger, the least that could happen is that it works out for you in your favor. I really do hope that. For you guys who have won life's lottery and you found a woman who is on your program, she's feminine, she's in good shape as far as what your standards are concerned. She can cook up to the standards that you find delicious. She's not weaponizing sex or its deprivation against you. She's pleasant to be around. She's pleasant to interact with way more often than she's not. And she's bringing value into your life instead of constantly holding her hand out. If that's what you found, if that's what you put a ring on, then my friend, I wish you guys nothing but everlasting success until one of you leaves this planet. For the rest of us, the odds are not in our favor. Not in the West specifically. Because in this society, the laws on the books are very clear. It does not matter what a woman says and or does. She must be compensated, babied, pampered, and given a soft place to land, no matter what her decisions are or whose lives they affect negatively. Very often, guys, women in the West are destroyers of peace and lovers of chaos. It's like most guys don't have a wife, girlfriend, or fiance laying beside them in bed. They have a grenade that can pull its own pin at any time, blowing up everything around them, while they miraculously escape unscathed. And the sad part of it is this, guys. We as men we're told by society at large that we should line up and put ourselves on the chopping block and embrace this shitty deal. I've compiled for you a couple of lists today. That if you're going to get married, this is what you should look out for, prepare yourself for, and if you have to, hire a U-Haul and move out of these states if you currently reside there and are thus currently dating there and could potentially get married there. In keeping with YouTube's terms of service, I must state beforehand that I am not an attorney. You are not receiving legal advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. With that said and fully understood, they are as follows. America's community property states. These states basically say that in the event of a divorce, no matter who brought what into the marriage, 50-50 split of all assets will be given to both parties, despite the fact that you may be bringing in or have brought in the lion's share of all the tangible assets in that marriage. These states include the most well-known of them all: California, Washington State, Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Louisiana, and Wisconsin. If you presently live and or are dating or engaged in any of these states, my advice to you is to get married somewhere outside of the state you presently live in. If the woman you're seeing right now simply cannot be talked out of getting married, you need to make it your business to let her know, if you really want to do this, we're not getting married in this state. You need to make it a destination wedding to the state of your choice that isn't one of the 8 community property states. You're fully aware that not only are you not getting married in one of the 8 community property states, but you will not be residing in any either, meaning you won't be taking any jobs in those states, and that you're going to get work elsewhere, and you will also have your permanent residence somewhere that isn't one of the 8 community property states at any time during your marriage, despite the fact that either one of you may get a job offer in any one of them that could be very lucrative. The answer is no. We shall not reside there during our marriage, if marriage is what you require of me for this relationship to go forward. You need to make that known, guys, because if you move from a non-community property state into a community property state, what happens is your marital assets are considered quasi-community property assets, and they might be just as subject to community property as someone who was born and raised in California, for example. So be mindful of that. Not to mention there's states that have permanent alimony, which means that if you and she break it off for whatever reason, or for no reason at all, she is entitled to a paycheck from you for the rest of your life, or until she remarries. But think about it, guys. What motivation does she really have to get a new husband when the old one is forced to write her a check forever? Those states include Connecticut, New Jersey, North Carolina, Oregon, Vermont, and West Virginia. Up until Governor Ron DeSantis signed the most recent bill canceling it in Florida, Florida was also among their number. But thankfully, that's no longer the case down there. So shout out to Ron DeSantis and the people of Florida. Salute to you guys. You guys figured it out. Of course, there's always prenuptial agreements. I don't care if you're both poor when you're starting out. You should both take the time to look it over. Let her get her own attorney. Have him look it over. Decide who gets what, when, where, and how. Put any clauses you think are necessary in there. And when it's agreed upon and signed, it should also be videotaped, the entire process. So she doesn't get to come back and say later on, when she's in her fee-fees, that she was under duress. No, it needs to be 3 cameras in that room. One on you, one on her, and one with a close-up on her to see the lack of distress in her face. And she should know those cameras are there. Next, you have the states that have what they call the alienation of affection laws. This is where if you catch her cheating on you, or if she decides to weaponize sex deprivation against you for compliance, you can sue her. That's all divorce is, guys. It's a lawsuit. You can sue her for not holding up her end of the marital bargain, because she definitely expects you to hold up yours. The states where alienation of affection is a legitimate reason to end a marriage are Hawaii, Mississippi, New Mexico, both North and South Carolina, and Utah. No man living in any of those states has any business suffering through a sexless marriage. And no, sir, you do not have to accept your wife's infidelity because you have grounds that are legally recognized in those states. Furthermore, if you include Washington, D.C. as a state, there are 15 of them that still have at-fault divorce on the books, meaning if you have a spouse who's doing things that normal people would recognize as a legitimate reason to end your marriage, not that bullshit of irreconcilable differences, but she cheated on you. She is putting her hands on you. She's blowing money, even though you told her to keep her finances under control. She's bad to the kids. These states include Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Connecticut, Delaware, Georgia, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, both North and South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia. Now, with the information you've been given, guys, you can cross-reference. If this state is one that you rather live in because they got community property, pick one of the ones that don't. If you have as a priority in your marriage as a vibrant sexual union, then maybe you want to pick one of the states that has alienation of affection as a law that allows you to hold her responsible for playing that game a lot of modern women try to play. If you are a person who understands that you don't want to wake up one day and your wife decides you sneeze too hard during hay fever season, so she wants to destroy the family, then maybe you want to move to an at-fault state. Same thing about a woman who wants to think she can get away with murder and just go and run the streets like her single friends do. You want to put yourself in a place where if she wants to leave, she's not going to have you paying her for the rest of your life. Couple that with tax policy, and maybe you can find a state that fits all the above. That's a good spot to A, get married in the first place if you're going to do it, and B, reside in as your permanent residence. I would say to any guy who's thinking about putting a ring on his finger and signing that contract with the government, I would say this: while you're taking time to taste the cake and figure out what photographer and the flowers and all the other things, how much the tuxedo rentals are going to cost, you need to take an hour out of your time. Go and sit down with a divorce attorney. Most of those guys give you an hour for free and say, listen, man, I know I only have an hour. I plan to get married next summer. What should I know beforehand? And stop talking. Let the man tell you. These things you need to put in place right now before you even get anywhere near that altar. So forth and so on. Talk to an estate planning professional. Talk to someone who understands asset protection. Google is your friend if you don't know who to call first. Okay? Find out what you can in order to protect yourself against a woman and her flaky behavior. Find out what you can to how to protect yourself and your potential children who have yet to be born from a woman who wakes up one morning and decides all your lives are now forever changed for no good actual reason. You owe it to yourself, and you owe it to those kids to protect them from her. I don't care who gets mad when they hear me say it, because that's the way things are. When well over 70% of all divorces in the United States are a woman's fault, or at the very least, a woman pulling the trigger. 90% of the time, if she's had any college education whatsoever, we know who the problem is. We know who the problem is here. So, as men, we're natural problem solvers. It behooves you, despite the shaming language you're going to get, despite all of the guilt trips you're going to get, it behooves you to let her know. I don't need marriage. You do. I don't even want marriage. You do. So, if I'm going to do this, I need these assurances in place, in writing and in front of me. Otherwise, we can either keep things the way exactly they are right now, or we can go our separate ways. And you can find another guy who's willing to take that bad deal. That's all I got for today, fellas. That's my time. Like the video? Comment down below. Share with a friend and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Never let your brother suffer in silence when the truth can set him free. Networkers, we working. Until next time.